Have you ever felt like someone disappeared from your life, yet somehow they never truly left? He stopped texting. He stopped calling. He vanished from your days, but not from your nights. You still sense his presence. You see him online. He watches your stories. He lingers in the silence. You wonder, is he still hurting? And if so, why doesn't he say anything? Carl Jung believed that what we repress in the unconscious never truly disappears. It transforms. It hides in shadows. It speaks in symbols, silence, and distance. So maybe his silence isn't peace. Maybe it's a scream that has no voice. Men suffer too. But not all pain comes with tears. Some of it comes with restraint, withdrawal, and pretending not to care. He may act cold, detached, like you never mattered. But there are signs, subtle, hidden, psychological. And if you know where to look, you'll see the truth. His love didn't die. It turned inward, and it's burning him from the inside out. This isn't about chasing. This isn't about winning someone back. This is about understanding what most people never notice: the invisible signs that he's not over you. Not really. And once you recognize these signs, you won't see love the same way again. So stay with me. What you're about to discover might not only reveal his truth, it might uncover your own. He loved you, at least. He thought he did. But there was something about you that made him uncomfortable, even though he could never quite name it. You reminded him of something familiar and forgotten, like a scent from childhood, or a feeling he couldn't place. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just affection. You touched something deeper in him, something he had spent his whole life trying not to feel. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him an unconscious image of the feminine, what he called the Anima. This Anima is not just a romantic ideal. It is the symbol of everything he rejects, everything he fears, and everything he secretly yearns for. When a woman reflects that image back to him, it's not always love he feels. Sometimes it's chaos. Sometimes it's fear. And sometimes it's pain. At first, he felt drawn to you. That's what everyone saw. But behind the compliments and gestures, there was a silent storm building. You didn't just make him feel alive, you made him feel exposed, vulnerable, seen. And for a man who has spent years burying parts of himself, being seen can feel like a threat. He may have told you he wasn't ready, that he needed space, that it wasn't you, it was him. But those words barely scratched the surface. What he really meant was this: you mirrored his unconscious self. You activated a part of him that he had no language for. And in that moment, love became overwhelming, not because it was wrong, but because it was real. Jung's work tells us that the unconscious governs more of our actions than we care to admit. We think we choose who we love, but often we are drawn to people who embody the unresolved within us. People who carry the shape of our wounds. People who speak to our shadows without saying a word. So what happens when a man meets a woman who awakens his unconscious? He may feel alive, yes, but he may also feel lost. Because she isn't just a person, she becomes a symbol, a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. That's why he pulled away. Not because he stopped feeling, but because he felt too much. You didn't remind him of someone else. You reminded him of himself, the version he hides, the version he never shows. Pain doesn't always come from betrayal. Sometimes it comes from revelation, from recognizing yourself in another and realizing how far you've strayed from who you truly are. You might wonder why he never told you any of this, why he left instead of staying to work things through. But for many men, pain is not something they express. It's something they bury. They're taught to suppress, to endure, to carry in silence. He didn't leave because he stopped caring. He left because you made him feel, and that feeling cracked the armor he spent years building. There's a reason you still feel his presence. There's a reason you can't shake the sense that he's watching from afar, still connected, still affected. That's not just imagination. That's psychological residue. When someone triggers our unconscious, the bond is not easily severed. Not by time, not by distance. You became part of his inner world, and whether he admits it or not, you're still there. This isn't about blame, this isn't about fault, this is about truth. And the truth is, love is never just about two people, it's about two histories, two shadows. Two unconscious minds colliding in the light of awareness. Now we begin the real journey. The 6 signs. 6 ways the unconscious reveals what words never will. 6 reflections of the pain he carries, not because you hurt him, but because love demanded he face himself. And that is the hardest thing of all. Sign 1. The silence that screams. He stopped talking. At first, it was subtle. A delay in his responses. A shorter message than usual. A phone call he forgot to return. Then, suddenly, there was only silence. You waited. You wondered. You questioned if you had said something wrong. But this kind of silence was not about what you did, it was about what he could no longer manage within himself. Carl Jung once wrote that what we resist not only persists, it grows stronger. Silence, in this context, is not emptiness. It is pressure. It is the loudest manifestation of unresolved emotion. And for a man who has been emotionally overwhelmed, silence becomes a survival tactic. You see, when you triggered something deep inside him, he couldn't name the feeling, he couldn't place the memory, but his body remembered, his psyche remembered. Maybe you reminded him of a moment he had buried, or a dynamic he swore he would never relive. Not consciously, but unconsciously, it all came rushing back. And instead of dealing with it, he disappeared into the only space that felt safe: withdrawal. Silence is often misunderstood as indifference. But in Jungian psychology, it can be a form of unconscious defense. When the external world feels like too much, the psyche collapses inward. It seeks refuge in the dark, not because it wants to forget, but because it cannot yet understand. And until understanding emerges, contact becomes unbearable. So when he stops reaching out, it's not always because he no longer cares. Sometimes, it's because caring has become too heavy. He fears saying something he cannot take back. He fears exposing the very parts of himself he does not want to see. His silence is not rejection. It is a boundary drawn by a man who feels like he's drowning inside, but cannot explain the depth of the water. You might be tempted to break the silence, to reach out, fix it, fill in the gaps. But understand, this silence is not a space you are meant to fill. It is a mirror he must face on his own. In moments like these, you become more than a person. You become a symbol. And when a man sees you as a symbol, his reaction is rarely rational. It is emotional, deeply so. He may shut down not because he wants to forget you, but because forgetting you feels like the only way to forget what you've awakened in him. You are not the cause of his silence. You are the key that unlocked a door he wasn't ready to open. And now, in the quiet that surrounds him, he is standing in that room, alone, surrounded by memories, fears, longings, and truths that have no words. Let his silence speak, not for him, but for what it reveals. Because silence, when listened to closely, tells you everything. It tells you he felt something real. It tells you he is overwhelmed. It tells you he is not over you, not truly. And perhaps, most of all, it tells you that love is never quiet, even when it goes unspoken. Sign 2. Conflicted actions that betray his words. He said he was done, that he needed to move on, that it was better this way. And yet, his actions whispered something entirely different. He still lingered around the places you used to go. He liked your photos but never messaged. He talked to your friends, asked about you, then pretended not to care when they told him you were doing fine. His behavior didn't match his story. That's because the story was incomplete. Carl Jung taught us that when a person is split between their conscious will and their unconscious desire, the result is contradiction. A man can say he has let you go while everything else about him screams that he hasn't. He can act detached, then suddenly appear when he thinks someone else might be close to you. He can speak cold words, then offer warmth in fleeting moments. This is not manipulation. This is a man at war within himself. The conflict here is between persona and shadow. The persona is the mask he shows the world, the one that says he is strong, composed, unaffected. But the shadow is where the truth lives. And the truth is, he is struggling. You activated something raw in him, and now he doesn't know how to contain it. So his behaviors become erratic. He pushes you away and then pulls you closer without realizing why. He might block you, then unblock you, ignore your messages, then posts something that feels like a message to you. These are not signs of control. They are signs of emotional overwhelm. He is attempting to regulate a storm he cannot name. And the storm is you, not in the way of blame, but in the way of impact. You impacted him more than he's ready to admit. In Jungian terms, this is projection. He sees you not only as you are, but also as who he wishes he could be. Or worse, who he fears he might be deep down. He projects his desires, his wounds, his confusion onto you. One moment, he idealizes you. The next, he resents you. Not because you changed, but because his inner world is unstable. These contradictory behaviors are not proof that he no longer cares. They are evidence that he is trying to suppress what refuses to be buried. Love, especially when it strikes a part of us we've denied, does not die quietly. It thrashes. It resists. It appears in ways we can't control. So when his actions betray his words, do not only listen to what he says, watch what he cannot help but do. Watch the moments he shows up, even after vowing not to. Watch how his presence lingers even in his absence. These are the signals of a man who is split into his mind, moving on, his unconscious holding on. The greatest pain for him is this split, to feel torn between letting go and holding on, between what he believes he should feel and what he actually feels. You are not imagining the signals. They are real, and they are the language of a psyche caught between truth and defense. He may never say it out loud. He may never offer clarity, but his contradictions speak louder than his silence. They tell you he is not indifferent. He is unresolved. And until he resolves the conflict within himself, his actions will remain a mirror of the battle inside him. A battle love began, and he is still trying to end. Sign 3. Obsession with the smallest details. He remembers things you barely noticed. The way you tilt your head when you're unsure. The song you hum when you're anxious. The exact words you once whispered when you thought he was asleep. He doesn't talk about it, but he remembers. And not just the big moments. The fights, the kisses, the goodbyes, but the fragments, the invisible pieces, the ordinary seconds you thought meant nothing. This kind of memory is not casual. It is not about nostalgia. It is a form of fixation. Carl Jung suggested that when the unconscious cannot express itself freely, it holds on to symbols. And in relationships, the other person becomes that symbol. You become a container for all he has suppressed: his longings, his shame, his unmet needs. So he stores pieces of you like tokens. And these tokens haunt him. He might not show it directly. He may act distant, detached, even indifferent. But he notices when you change your hair. He picks up on your tone in a message. He sees who comments on your photos. He remembers what you wore the last time he saw you, even if it was months ago. These aren't signs of emotional control. They are signs of emotional residue. His mind is trying to find closure in details because his heart never got any. In Jungian terms, you have become a psychic imprint, a complex. And once a complex is triggered, it replays itself. Over and over. His thoughts keep circling back to you. Not because he wants them to, but because they demand attention. He may try to distract himself: new people, work, noise, but the unconscious always returns to what was left incomplete, what was left unsaid. That is why the smallest things matter to him, because they are easier to carry than the weight of the truth. It's easier to remember the scent of your perfume than to face the fact that he wasn't ready for the version of himself he saw when he looked into your eyes. It's easier to replay a conversation than to admit he still wants to have it. Sometimes he might bring up something from the past casually, as if it just crossed his mind. But it didn't. It's been sitting there, beneath the surface, waiting for an opening. He doesn't want to forget. He can't. Because forgetting would mean losing not just you, but a part of himself that only existed in your presence. When someone touches the unconscious, they don't leave gently. Their fingerprints stay. And every detail becomes a map. A way back. A way forward. A wound. And a key. So if you find that he remembers too much, that he holds on to things you forgot, understand this. He is not obsessed with you. He is obsessed with the version of himself he became, with you, the version that felt seen, exposed, vulnerable, alive. And though he may never say it, those details are not just about you. They are about him, about what you reflected, about what he lost when he stepped away. Memory, in this way, is not just recollection. It is a silent form of mourning. And the more he remembers, the more it hurts. Not because the moments were perfect, but because they were real. And in a world where most of what he shows is a performance, realness is the most unbearable thing to lose. Sign 4. Avoiding you without ever. Truly leaving. He won't call. He won't message. He won't show up where he used to. But he never fully disappears either. He stays in orbit. Quiet. Distant. Present in the background. You don't see him, but you sense him. He might unfollow you, then check your profile from another account. He might stop replying, but you hear from mutual friends that he still asks about you. He avoids contact, but never disconnection. And that is not indifference, that is resistance. Carl Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we reject, yet cannot escape. In love, when someone reflects our shadow, we are drawn to them and repelled by them at the same time. This is what creates the push and pull, the paradox of wanting closeness but fearing it. He distances himself, not to forget you, but to protect himself from the parts of himself you bring to the surface. He is afraid of what being near you does to him. Not because you hurt him, but because you reach him in a place that is raw and unguarded. You make him feel what he's spent years avoiding. Vulnerability, longing, shame, hope, all of it. You are not just a person to him. You are an emotional trigger, a living symbol of everything he has not yet resolved. So he stays away not because he is free, but because he is overwhelmed. This avoidance is a coping mechanism. It gives him space to maintain control, because to be around you would mean risking collapse. His silence is armor. His absence is an attempt to restore balance. But it never truly works, because in the unconscious, there is no distance. Physical space means nothing when your presence still lives inside him. Jung believed that what is denied comes back in disguise. So even when he avoids you, he seeks you in others, in songs, in conversations, in dreams. He might be with someone new, yet feel haunted by something he cannot name. That ghost is you. Or more precisely, the version of himself that only comes alive in your presence. Avoidance, then, is not forgetting. It is suppression. And suppression always leaks. It leaks in dreams, in habits, in silence. He may not knock on your door, but he still walks by your street in his mind. Still pauses when he hears your name. Still watches from afar, hoping you never see him, yet wishing you would. This in-between state, neither fully present nor completely gone, is a form of emotional purgatory, and it is one of the clearest signs that he is still hurting. He cannot engage, but he cannot detach. He fears the pain of presence, and he fears the emptiness of absence. So he stays suspended, and you become the person he keeps avoiding, not because you mean nothing, but because you mean too much. It is painful to witness, to feel someone vanish without explanation, yet sense them hovering like a shadow. But understand this, his avoidance is not rejection, it is paralysis. And the more he avoids, the louder the unconscious becomes. Because in the end, what we try to silence only finds new ways to speak. His silence is not the end of your story. It is the middle of his. A story still unfolding, still unresolved, still bound to you by threads that no distance can truly cut. Sign 5. Jealousy that feels like abandonment. He no longer holds the right to ask where you are or who you're with. He gave that up when he left, but somehow he still reacts, subtly, quietly, through glances, passive comments, or changes in tone. He hears your name linked with someone else, and his expression shifts. He pretends not to care, but something in him tightens. He becomes colder, distant, or suddenly interested again. Not because he wants to possess you, but because something inside him feels abandoned. Carl Jung believed that every adult carries within them the inner child, the part that was once wounded, ignored, or left behind. And when love touches this part, it awakens old fears. Not fears of losing you to someone better, but fears of being forgotten altogether. You see, jealousy is not always about ownership. Sometimes it's about irrelevance. about no longer being the one someone turns to, even in thought. For him, seeing you move on is not just about you finding someone new. It is about you no longer needing him. And that activates something primal. He may not even understand why he reacts the way he does. But beneath the surface, his unconscious is shouting. It says, "You were supposed to stay. You were supposed to wait. You were supposed to confirm that his absence still held weight in your life." He might scroll through your photos and pause when he sees another man beside you. He might start conversations with mutual friends just to find out what you're doing. He might even try to insert himself back into your life, not to rekindle love, but to reassure himself that he still matters. This jealousy is not pure ego. It is not narcissism. It is grief. Grief for the role he once played. Grief for the version of himself that only existed in your presence. And when that version disappears, it feels like death. The death of connection. The death of meaning. In Jungian language, this is the activation of the complex, the unfinished emotional story that resurfaces under stress. You are not the source of his jealousy. You are the symbol. And the moment he sees you in someone else's world, the illusion of control crumbles. He realizes he is no longer in the room, no longer on your mind, no longer relevant to your becoming. It is important to understand this form of jealousy. It doesn't look dramatic. It may not come with accusations or confrontations. It often shows up in silence, in absence, in emotional withdrawal. But it is sharp, and it cuts deep, not just for him, but for you, because you can feel it even when he says nothing. You are not responsible for his reaction, but you are part of what triggered it. You moved forward. You released the story he was still silently clinging to. And now he is left behind, not just by you, but by the version of himself he lost when he walked away. Jealousy, in this form, is the ache of being forgotten, the fear that what once felt sacred is now irrelevant. And though he may never say it, his pain whispers every time he sees your name and wonders who's holding your attention now. He doesn't want to control you. He just doesn't know how to exist in a world where you no longer need him to. And that is the tragedy he carries. Quietly, alone, watching as the person who once reflected his deepest self becomes someone else's mirror. Sign 6. Quietly watching your life from afar. He doesn't reach out. He doesn't interfere. But he watches, silently, from a distance. He checks your posts, reads your captions, notices who you are becoming. You might think he's gone, but there he is in the background of your digital life, still paying attention, still holding on in the only way he knows how. Carl Jung wrote that when something remains unresolved in the unconscious, it will find ways to remain present in our reality. In today's world, presence doesn't require conversation. It requires observation. And observation can be obsessive, especially when it comes from a place of emotional residue and psychological attachment. He tells himself he's just curious, that he's happy for you, that he's moved on. But the truth is, he cannot stop watching, because you represent more than a past relationship. You represent the inner work he avoided, the growth he postponed, the self he met and rejected. Every post you share, every update you make, it's not just content. It's a reminder of who you were when you were with him, of who he was, and of the distance that now lives between those versions of you both. This kind of observation is not passive. It is charged. His mind returns to your name, not out of routine, but because your story remains incomplete in his psyche. You are the open loop, the unresolved chapter, the symbol of what he felt, but never fully understood, so he stays, quiet, watching, hoping to make sense of the part of him that was only ever visible in your presence. He sees you laughing with friends, traveling, building something new, and each image strikes something inside him, not always jealousy, but reflection. He wonders if he helped you become this version of yourself, or if he was simply the lesson that shaped your becoming. Either way, you're growing, and that growth, while beautiful, is bittersweet to him, because it confirms what he has suspected all along: you didn't need him to bloom. Still, he watches, not to invade, not to manipulate, but to feel close, to stay connected to something that once made him feel alive. He doesn't want to message. He fears rejection, awkwardness, or the confirmation that he no longer matters. But he also fears letting go completely, because letting go would mean facing the void. And in that void, he would have to meet himself again. Jung believed that the unconscious constantly seeks completion. And in relationships, we often assign that task to another person. When you left her, when he pushed you away, that sense of psychological completion shattered. So he stays attached through the only means left to him: observation, silent presence, a distant witness to your unfolding life. He doesn't know what he's looking for. Maybe a sign that you remember him. Maybe proof that he mattered. Maybe nothing at all, just a way to avoid forgetting. But each time he returns to your world, even from afar, he confirms one thing: he is not done. Not with you. Not with the version of himself you brought into the light. Watching from a distance is not weakness. It is a kind of grief, a silent mourning for the love he could not hold, for the transformation he was not ready to undergo, and for the intimacy he still craves but cannot yet face. So the next time you sense his eyes on your story, his name among your viewers, or his presence in your shadow, know this: he is still there. Not because he wants to keep you from moving forward, but because a part of him has never left the place where you last stood together. He thought he could walk away. That time would wash it clean. That distance would dissolve what he felt. But the truth has only grown louder in the silence. He was never running from you. He was running from the part of himself that you awakened. The part he was not ready to meet. The part he still does not understand. Carl Jung called it the Anima, feminine energy within every man. It is not just softness or emotion. It is intuition, vulnerability, chaos, creation, truth. And when a man meets a woman who mirrors his anima, it does not always lead to love. Sometimes it leads to collapse, because she reflects everything he has not reconciled within himself. She becomes a mirror of his unlived life, his rejected feelings, his buried pain. You were not just someone he loved. You were the reflection of his inner world, the part of him he tried to forget, denied, or never knew existed. And in loving you, he began to feel it. Not just joy, but fear. Not just attraction, but confrontation. You pulled something forward that had been sleeping for years. This is why he left. This is why he watches. This is why he still suffers. Because the love he felt was not simple. It was a calling, a mirror, a chance to grow. And he wasn't ready. So he buried it, hoping it would disappear. But it never did. Because the unconscious does not forget what the soul is meant to learn. Now, he carries you like a ghost. Not just because of who you were, but because of what you represented. The version of himself that only ever lived in your presence. Love is often romanticized as completion, as the beautiful merging of two people who finally find what they were missing. But Carl Jung warned us true love is not comfort. It is transformation. And transformation, by its very nature, is painful. When two people meet and awaken the unconscious in each other, what rises is not just affection. It is shadow. It is truth. It is everything they have not faced until now. You did not break him. You revealed him. You showed him parts of himself that had long been buried. And while you may have wanted closeness, what he experienced was confrontation. You were not asking him to change, but your presence demanded it. Because love is not just about how we feel, it is about who we become in its presence. And not everyone is ready to become that person. He left not because you were too much, but because you were too real. You cracked the surface. You stirred the stillness. And that is what love does when it is honest. It does not soothe the ego, it dissolves it. In front of you, he could not hide. And so he ran it from you, but from the mirror you unknowingly held. But running does not erase the reflection. The image remains. And now, even in your absence, he is still face to face with the self he tried to deny. This is the true pain. Not the loss of a relationship, but the loss of the illusion that he could avoid himself forever. In this way, you did not wound him. You awakened him. And awakening always hurts before it heals. Jung called this individuation the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pleasing, but whole. And it begins with shadow, with discomfort, with someone showing you what you did not want to see. That someone was you. And while he may not thank you now, his soul remembers. His soul knows that your love was not destruction. It was revelation. You may never hear the words. You may never get the closure. But somewhere within him a shift has begun. Quiet, subtle, incomplete, but real. He is different now not because you stayed, but because you were willing to leave when he would not meet you in the light. This is your freedom. To know that your presence mattered, that your love was not wasted, that the pain he carries is not your failure. It is the cost of truth. And in truth, there is always a seed of growth, even if it takes years to bloom. So let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the need to be seen by the one still blinded by his own fear. Because you saw him, you loved him, and through that love, you gave him a mirror that no time can erase. Somewhere, in his quiet moments, he will remember, and he will ache, not just for you, but for the version of himself that only ever existed when you were near. And maybe then, he will begin again. Not because you returned, but because you helped him see what he must now become on his own. Maybe he never told you. Maybe he never will. But if you've seen these signs, if you've felt them, you already know. He is not over you. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And real love does not fade. It transforms. It lingers. It teaches. You were not just someone he loved. You were someone who reflected his soul. And even if he never comes back, even if he never speaks again, a part of him still carries you. Not as a memory, but as a mirror of who he could become. Now it's your turn to ask yourself, what did this love awaken in you? What part of you did it challenge, expose, or set free? If any part of this spoke to you, take a moment. Sit with it. And when you're ready, share your story. Someone out there needs to know they're not the only one feeling this. You can leave a comment if you've ever seen these signs in someone, or if you've been the one silently suffering, watching from the shadows. And if you want more stories like this, stories that go deeper, stay with us. Subscribe, share, or simply return when your heart needs to hear something honest again. This is a space for those who feel too much. You are not alone.